Your white belt era can be some of the most annoying and frustrating years in your jiu-jitsu journey, and trust me, in the 8 years it's taken me to get to brown belt, I can still vividly remember many, if not all, of the issues I had as a white belt. So for today, we're covering 4 conceptual tips that you can start doing today for immediate results. Let's jump in. Starting things off with tip number 1, tip of the branch. Now, when I am teaching class, especially to brand new white belts, I like to use the analogy of a branch. Where is a branch its weakest and where is it strongest? It's strongest near its base while it's weakest at its tip. If I want the best results when trying to move a branch the most, I'm gonna grab at its end or its very tip. We're using the same concept when applying to, let's say, submissions or even head posture, right? You can see in this example, when I get my collar ties around the base of his neck or the base of his head, he's a lot stronger here, okay? Not only am I fighting his neck muscles, I'm also fighting his posterior chain. If I'm trying to snap him down by using his neck, it can still work, but I have to use a lot more body weight and strength. But if we use the concept of the tip of the branch and I aim to pull the front of his head down to the tip of his head, I get a lot more play, a lot more movement with that technique with a lot less effort. So as you can see, instead of grabbing the back of his neck, I'm snapping down at the top of his head. This rolls his head forward, he snaps back up to adjust for the pressure I've applied, which allows me an opportunity to shoot in for a takedown. As you continue to train jiu-jitsu, you'll see that this concept applies all over the place. For this example, we're looking at the rolling calf slicer. Now, as soon as I get into position and the submission is set, I'm not grabbing halfway down his shin because he's more powerful there. I'm grabbing towards the end of his foot or his toes, or as we like to say, the tip of the branch. I get a lot more leverage there with a lot less effort. In this last example, you can see that I'm hitting a traditional armbar from the mount position. Once I have the submission set, I'm not leveraging against the middle of his forearm. I'm grabbing near the end of his arm or the end of the branch to get the most force with the least effort applied. This is great for energy conservation, and honestly, it's the best way to finish these submissions that require that leverage. The more you train jiu-jitsu, the more you're gonna see this concept popping up all over the place. Keep this one in your back pocket. If you're not using it yet, definitely apply it today. You will immediately get better results. And I just want to take a quick break to give my sponsors, X Martial, a shout out. Not only does X Martial have the highest quality no-gi gear for adults and kids on the market, they also provide workout equipment and training tools, everything from resistance bands to grip work to abdominal work. You name it, they got it. On top of all that, they also have the X Martial Charity Initiative, where they help bullied or underprivileged people get help with their training fees and free gear. You're not gonna find a higher quality company out there. So if you wanna look as good as me and probably even better, get over to xmartial.com, use my code IRONWILL to save yourself some money, and look good while you sharpen your skills. All right, well, I think that covers it. Let's get back to the video. Tip number 2, grips. Now, unless you know what you're doing, grips can be a little bit confusing. What grip should I use in which scenario? What's the proper way to use these grips? Is there any grips I shouldn't use at all? The answer to all of this is yes, essentially. We're gonna cover some basic grips here. It doesn't mean that this is all of the grips available in jiu-jitsu. This is just some of the main ones you're gonna see frequently and the ones that you can constantly rely on. First up on our list of grips, the gable grip. Now, in my opinion, this is what I believe to be the strongest grip you can do to yourself. This one's great for body locks. This one's great for a lot of secure holding positions, right? Next up would be the S grip. S grip, not as strong as the gable grip, but it's great if you need a little bit more room. Let's say you're going against a thicker opponent and you need a little bit more room to get around his waist or his shoulders and neck. The S grip can be very useful. And the last grip on today's list of grips that you should use in jiu-jitsu would be the seatbelt grip. Now, there's a couple different ways to do this. Think taking someone's back and you've got one arm over their shoulder in front of their body and the other one's up under their armpit in front of their body, and you're obtaining the seatbelt grip in front. But also you can set up a very similar grip when trying to hit an arm-in guillotine, right? There's a lot of different ways to do this, but this is a really great lock when you're trying to maintain pressure, especially with someone's neck involved. How about a grip we should never use? Well, I can guarantee that all the wrestlers probably already know this one, but that would be the finger weave grip. The only time I'll say the finger weave grip is acceptable is when you're dancing with your partner on your wedding day and your hands are on the small of their back. Then you can use the finger weave grip in a grappling or fighting scenario. Don't ever use that. That's a really great way, especially if you or your opponent fall on those hands. It's a great way to break some fingers, which is obviously not ideal, especially in a fight. I see a lot of new people come in and try this grip instinctively, and it's really not as strong as you think it is. So not only is it ineffective, but it's dangerous because your fingers are at risk. So eliminate that one from your repertoire immediately. Tip number 3, 3 points of contact. Now this is a concept I like to apply to my open guard. And of course, we've all been in scenarios where our opponent is really scrambling to pass our guard and we might only be able to have 1 point of contact, meaning 1 foot on their waist. Or maybe sometimes we can get 2 feet on and help maintain that open guard. Typically, the more points of contact you have, the safer and more effective you'll be. So think 2 feet on the waist, maybe a foot on the hip, maybe a foot on the calf, maybe a foot on the leg pit. Your 3rd point of contact would be a grip. Whether you have a grip around their other ankle, you're gripping their wrist essentially. You can still hit some sweeps with 2 points of contact. With 1 point of contact, you're basically just trying to survive, right? So if you really want to increase your odds when in open guard, aim for 3 points of contact. I think at the very minimum, 2 points will help keep you alive. And there's, like I said, there's been moments where obviously in a scramble, I'm fighting to just keep 1 point of contact on there. As long as you realize that your risk of having your guard passed increases as your points of contact decrease. Any of my sweeps that I'm hitting, if I can have a wrist involved, it's really easy to hit some of our basic sweeps that we see or learn as white belts. So as you can see in these examples, all of these sweeps originate from having 3 points of contact. I have a wrist under control and I have contact with my feet on his legs or his waist. And using a combination of all of these 3, I can hit a variation of sweeps relatively easily as long as I have my contacts planted and strong. Let's just say in this example, you are brand new to Jiu Jitsu and you don't know any sweeps yet. Just by having 3 points of contact, it'll already be automatically more difficult for your opponent to pass your guard and get to a position of dominance. So without knowing any submissions or sweeps, you can still focus on having 3 points, and this will make you a more difficult person to grapple with. Last but not least, shot posture. Using good posture is something that you're gonna see come up time and time again in Jiu Jitsu. Conceptually, a great place to focus on this is in our offense from our feet or when we're shooting shots. If I'm shooting in and I'm leaving my head forward and my posture is forward, that's not a good position for me, and I'm basically giving my opponent a guillotine choke opportunity with a bow. It's a Christmas present, essentially. So one thing you can do right now to immediately improve your shots is to correct your posture. You can see in this example, he has the guillotine on me. As soon as I fix my posture, that guillotine is no longer there. He can squeeze down on that, it's not going to choke me. And essentially all I have to do is posture up, swing his legs towards the side that my head is on, so that when I land, I'm chest to chest, cross body. Even if he still has that choking arm wrapped around my neck when we're on the ground, there is no choking pressure there and I am safe. Had I tried to finish that submission in that poor posture position, I would have fallen directly into a guillotine and that would have been the end of the match. I can't say for sure where people learn to shoot with poor posture. I don't know if it comes from just laziness and learning the movements from the double leg, or if it's probably more so coming from an area of just lack of knowledge. But whatever the reasoning is, you need to fix that, because the longer that you practice something incorrectly, the harder it becomes to fix. It becomes part of your repertoire, your arsenal, and that's the last thing you want is poor posture wrapped up in your toolbox, in your arsenal. So start paying attention to your posture, because something as easy and simple as fixing it can make you so much more difficult to submit. And the harder you are to submit, the better you're gonna be. So with that, guys, if you have any comments, concerns, thoughts, drop them in the comments below. I read through everything and I always appreciate the knowledge you guys share. With that, you know how we like to end them. Sometimes backwards, always forward. I'll see you in the next one.